This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Okay, so the time has come to finally pick a matte box for my red Komodo rig. A lot of you guys requested this in the comments. You wanted to see what was going on in the matte box space right now. There's a lot of things to choose from. The thing that I'm trying to figure out is really just like to find the perfect balance between cost and functionality. And if you did watch my red Komodo rig build video, I do have a lot of qualms with variable NDs and just matte box systems in general. And it's not that any of them are bad, it's just that I want to find like the most ideal one, the most efficient one for me on set, you know, if I'm by myself or if I have a camera assistant or whatever. And also I want them to be able to fit with my Mikey cinema lenses, which have an 85mm outer diameter on the lens, which is a little bit less common for matte boxes. And then also I want it to be able to work on my Canon FD lenses, which are, you know, cine modded, so they have an 80mm outer diameter on the front. You know, it's a matter of picking a clip-on matte box or a swing away matte box that goes on the 15mm rail. So that's what we're gonna be looking at today. I have a few matte boxes here to try out and we are going to give them a test. Let's break into one now. Got some filters here. A little pouch for the filters. Going along with the rest of my Komodo rig, we've got a wooden camera. So we've got this wooden camera zip box here. And then I also ordered the new Tilta Mirage. Oh, come on, get focused there. So I think the main problem is I didn't actually order the right rings yet because they were back ordered for the 85mm rings. So we're just gonna kind of do our best here to see how these matte boxes perform anyways, just to kind of look at the ND systems and see how well those perform. I really don't want to deal with reflections that come from polarizing variable NDs. That's why I did order these Nisi just like straight up IR ND filters, infrared cut ND filters here. That we might just use inside the zip box. So there will be no, you know, if we use inside the zip box, there'll be no variable NDs there at all. It'll just be straight cutting of the light, which is more accurate usually, and you know, more predictable, which is really what I want if I'm going to invest a bunch of money, hundreds of dollars into a system. I also borrowed a Pola Pro matte box that we can grab here. This is a really common one that people are using these days. Thank you, Easton, for letting me borrow this. The base camp here. So I'm gonna unbox these. I'm gonna start throwing them on the camera and start testing these out in the daylight, and I will come back with some conclusions. Okay, so obviously ignore this ridiculous harsh light that I have on me, but I'm going to use this. It's an Aperture Nova P300C as, you know, as a way of kind of looking at these ND filters, because I was doing this outside, and that's probably where you would probably use an ND filter most often, but I was running into quite a few things on the image that I was not expecting. I would say overall, what I was expecting from this setup, from this test, did not come true, and so let's talk about that now. So right now we've got the wooden camera zip box on. It's the swing away matte box. I thought that would be more convenient for my style of shooting as a cinematographer that mostly does commercials. I've got my cinema lenses. I can swing it away, throw on another cinema lens, and swing it right back in. Also, I got this because I was unsure if I was going to have the right adapters for using the 85mm outer diameter lenses, my Mikey lenses. I kind of did figure that out though. I had a little ring adapter for the Tilta mini matte box that I was able to use to adapt it to most of the lenses here. Right now I just have it on a Sigma 18-35 and I do not have it properly attached. It's just pushed right up against the lens, so it should still do everything. I doubt we have any reflections or anything because we don't have any backlight, so it still looks fine. I mean, the harsh light looks ridiculous, but that's okay. So we've got an IR ND6 in there right now. We've got this Nisi IR ND6 that I wanted to try out. So infrared, it's an infrared reduction filter, right? It's an ND filter that also reduces infrared. So when I noticed in the footage immediately from the tests that these were creating a red cast on the image, I was like, oh no, infrared pollution. But then I started thinking, is it just tint? Is it infrared pollution? So then I just shot a plate with the Komodo without a filter on at all. I just stopped the lens down to T22, and there was still a little bit of red in there, so I'm wondering if it's just how the color is coming out of the Komodo as is. But this is accentuating that, and it's kind of making it worse. For sure. So let's just get something out of the way real quick before we start talking about all these matte boxes. The thing between variable and actual ND filters, and the thing I want to talk about and the thing I wanted to really figure out was which one is going to give me the most neutral image, but also the one that's going to cause me the least amount of problems. Like practically speaking, you know, so what these variable, like the ones that are coming here, like with the Pola Pro or the Tilta Mirage, these have variable ND filters in them. And what that actually means is there's not really an ND filter. There sort of is, but really what you're doing is you're putting two polarizers together, and then you're spinning one of the polarizers, which is going to then filter out light and darken the image. But an ND filter, a neutral density filter, actually cuts light in a different way. And so you're going to get different results from a color cast and different results from skin tones and so on and so forth. What I expected out of this test was that these Nisi cinema filters were going to be the most neutral version I could probably get because they're just straight infrared neutral density filters. Okay, so let's just do a couple tests here in this environment now with a very controlled light. We've got that Aperture Nova over here. I've got the 0.6 in here, which is not a lot of ND, but it should definitely show us if we're gonna get a color cast or not. So here is a test with this. We're gonna throw up the gray card here. So let's see what that looks like with the Tilta Mirage and see if we have any color changes here. All right, so that's basically how the histogram looked when we had the wooden camera matte box on there. So while we're here talking about the wooden camera matte box, I like the construction of this one a lot. It's made out of very nice materials. It's a decent size. It can fit a full 4x5.65 filter. It came with quite a bit of inserts on the back so you can use it on multiple lenses. And then it's swing away, which is nice because you don't have to clip it on the lens. So maybe if you do use a random lens, it will just kind of tuck around it, and it comes with this little boot that you can slide on the lens, which makes it kind of universal compared to some of these other ones, which are not the case. Got a nice carbon fiber top flag on them, but I guess they kind of all have that. Something I'm not sure if I like about it. So how the filters go in, this is not like a traditional matte box that has a slide that you slide in the top, like this here. Pola Pro, that's a more traditional style, although these Pola Pros are proprietary and they will not work on other matte boxes from what I understand. On this one, you just kind of, there's a little pull tab on the top here, and you pull the tab, it opens the top, and then the filter should fall out. Problem is, it's kind of hard to get to. It's kind of hard to get to the filter, and you're definitely putting fingerprints on that as well, which is not cool. Not the end of the world by any means, but I thought it would probably be tilted more. I thought it would fall out easier, basically fall into your hand. And there is 3 slides in here, so you can put 3 filters, stack 3 filters in here, which is nice, because if, say, I have a 6 in there, I want to throw another 3 in there just to get to 9 really quick, you can do that. but I don't like this. See, look, if I open it, nothing happens. Like, how do I get to the filter? It's perfectly sized, so I don't know how to get to the filter. Basically, I have to tilt the matte box or stick your fingernail back here and give it a little kick, and I don't like that either. I think it should be easier to grab, and it just isn't very easy to grab, and I don't like that. But let's throw up the gray card again here with the Tilta Mirage. Let's see if there's a color cast. We're basically at 0.6 again on the ND, matching the histogram with the aperture nova over here. So the difference is this is now polarizing the light to darken the image rather than just using a neutral density filter to darken the image. All right, we're gonna throw on the Pola Pro matte box and see what it looks like. It's about the same exposure now with the Pola Pro with the 2 to 5 filter in it. So while we're here with the Pola Pro is pretty nice. It comes with a lot of like kind of nice bags and packaging, and it has these proprietary slides. This is this is going to be like your first filter, and then there's a circular polarizer that goes behind this, and that's what you actually roll on the top of the matte box to get it to actually change intensity. Really convenient little thumb wheel. Same with the Tilta Mirage. It has its own little thumb wheel. Really convenient, and it has its own proprietary slides, I believe, as well. But Vaxis does make filters that work for this same setup. I believe they're 95 millimeter circular filters. Look it. So these little babies come out, and you roll this wheel here to change the intensity. It's a self-contained unit, so that this is the ND filter. So you can actually get these little clamps that clamp this on front of your lens. But that's not what we're really looking at today. We're looking at a full matte box system. What's cool about the little Tilta Mirage is that you can actually mount, it actually comes with a little motor in the kit that I ordered. And you can actually mount an electronic motor on top of here, which will spin this, and so you can remotely change your ND when you want to change it with just a wheel, which is really convenient. So your AC could do it for you. The Tilta Mirage also, the edges kind of pop off to make it more lightweight. The Pola Pro does that as well. You can basically strip these matte boxes down to where they fly on a gimbal easier. While we're talking about the Tilta Mirage, I would say that the Tilta Mini matte box, which a lot of people have because it's very, very cheap and it just holds one filter, it's basically, the Mirage is just kind of a bona fide version of it. Like, it's just a little bit bigger. It also has the 15 millimeter lightweight rod mount. So like I was using this on the Komodo just by mounting it on the rails rather than using one of their donuts. Because I'm not sure they have the right adapter for the 85 millimeter for my Mikeys. But it was nice that they included that, and it was really easy to mount on the system. I would say that this is much more lightweight and more flimsy than something like the one camera one, which is probably the beefiest of the set that I have here. Pola Pro probably comes in second. Obviously this comes in last. So before we look at the footage comparing these filters in this kind of environment, let's talk about today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to present your work online. If you're anything like me, you're gonna need a website to show off your work online. And Squarespace is a great way to build a website for that very occasion. You can start with one of their pre-existing templates, or you can build your site from scratch. They basically have all the tools on the back end to allow you to do that. Of course, if you're a filmmaker or a video maker or cinematographer, they make it super easy to embed videos on the website using Vimeo or YouTube. All you do is just drop the link on the page, and then it loads up the video for you. And you can do this in like a portfolio fashion, or you can just put the video wherever you want on the web page. And it just makes it very practical to upload videos on the fly, because you know when you are making new videos, you're going to want to update your website whenever you can. When those videos come out and Squarespace, it's really just easy to throw those on there. So if you're anything like me and you're looking to build a website, well, you can just make it with Squarespace. Click the link in the description to get 10% off, and I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So although the wooden camera matte box uses standard filters in it. You can also get a different stage that goes on the back here that will allow circular polarizers. So you could, in theory, also put a variable ND on the back of this if you would rather use the variable ND systems, which is what I was trying to avoid. I love variable ND because I love that you can dial in like a third of a stop and just really fine tune where those highlights are clipping. But then you sacrifice because you're using the polarized system, which sometimes causes a lot of issues. Like my variable ND filter that goes behind the lens on my Komodo, the little like variable ND mount that I have. The issue with that is that when I'm like actually scrolling through the wheel, you can actually see color shifting as you're scrolling, which is really common with polarizers because you're changing how you're filtering the light as you're scrolling. So you basically have to kind of just decide what you're willing to deal with. So that's why I was trying to go with this Nisi system, and I still might. This still seems like a pretty decent option, but it's definitely not perfect. I do like the swing away option here. You know, we can just undo this and it swings out, and then you can literally just grab your lens, pull it off. This stays here, doesn't bother anyone, it stays on the rig. You don't have to find a place to set it down. You don't have to, you know, risk a filter breaking when you're doing that. And then you just slide it back, the filter stays in, and you've now swung your lens and everything's back to exactly the way it was. Really convenient, I really like that part of it. So that's kind of the bummer with the other systems that we have here. The Mirage does have these little rail mounts that you can use, but you still have to take the whole thing off, set it down on a table, set it down somewhere, risk it getting broken rather than just staying on the rig at all times. Now, the plus side to that though is if you're gonna use an easy rig, or if you're going to be, you're not gonna have rails, or you're gonna be on a gimbal, well, these are nice because they clamp right to the lens, and so you can still fly with them and you don't need rails to make them work. What's nice about the wooden camera is that the filters will work with other matte boxes, they can work with other systems, whereas your Mirage is a little, it's not proprietary per se, but it is kind of locking you into what's going on here. If you want to use the motor that goes on here, it's really only going to work on this. You kind of have to buy into the system and live with that system permanently unless you wanted to sell that for something else later down the road. Same with Pola Pro. Pola Pro's matte box. Same thing. This is all proprietary. You have to stick with their filters. You can't even use like a Tiffin Black Promise with this. You have to use their mist filter to make it work with inside the constraints of the matte box, which is kind of a bummer when you just want to, like, maybe you find a filter you like and you want to use. It's going to be harder to use it with this. You're going to have to buy the proprietary filters. I definitely don't like that. I definitely like my freedom and I don't want to be locked down, and that's why I'm still kind of leaning towards the wooden camera. But now for the price here, the wooden camera kit will cost the most money. It is also the biggest, heaviest kit so far. I mean, these are pretty light, but they do have the variable ND systems in them, so they're obviously, I would say these are probably not far off in weight. The Mirage is definitely the smallest of them. The Mirage is just a little bit smaller than the Pola Pro here. Just a little bit smaller, and overall just more lightweight. It's gonna be more versatile for a smaller camera system than the Pola Pro would be, and it can break down even smaller, which is nice. And then it has the motor that you can use to, you know, control the ND wirelessly, which is really fun, or even maybe just with your thumb on the rig, so you don't have to reach around to the front. Here's the actual motor unit that's proprietary to the system. You have this filter pouch that comes with it. It's kind of nice, and that will Velcro and pull off of this. Whereas if you're gonna have your NDs that are gonna go in this system, you either have to have individual pouches for every one of those NDs, or you can get a big pouch, which I have here somewhere, that can hold all of them for you, which is not that bad either. You do risk dropping any of these filters. I do like these because they're already like inside their slide, so they've already kind of have a little bit of protection on them, and then they also have their own case that comes with it. Now there are alternative matte boxes to these that we're talking about here today. You could get an Airy style matte box. There's a lot of knockoffs of those. And they're your very standard matte box. What I like about those is that they're really heavy duty. You're probably gonna have them forever. They use the regular size filters like this wooden camera one. What's also nice about those too is they just like, if you clip one on, it's just gonna lock on really well. You're gonna be able to actually hold the matte box on a shoulder rig and operate it, whereas I feel like you probably could with this. That is kind of the bonus of having it mounted to the rails, is that it's gonna be much more secure than when you clamp it onto a cinema lens. It could slip off. Like, you're definitely not gonna be holding onto this Tilta Mirage. This is very plasticky and very lightweight and much cheaper. You're not gonna be grabbing onto that and using it to swing your camera around and then actually trust it. These are designed for different things, right? They're designed to be more lightweight and, you know, less expensive. Whereas the wooden camera is kind of in between. It can, like, made out of like more of like a metal material. It's gonna be a little bit more durable and more versatile in that way. Do I have a winner? I don't know if I have a winner. I do think for the cost, you're gonna get the most out of the Mirage. Now the Mirage, it's lightweight. You could break it down to the smallest. Like this whole thing can go down really, really small. You're still gonna have variable ND with it, so it could go on a gimbal. You get the electronic motor system in it. I think that whole kit costs about $700 or $800. It basically can do like everything, and then you can buy filters like mist filters and stuff like that. The Vaxis system, which will plug into it. It basically checks the most boxes. But the color cast seems to be pretty real based on these tests that we just looked at here. So that's kind of that's a pretty big downside. It was correctable in post. I did, just add a little bit of magenta to it, a little bit of blue back into it, and it did neutralize it. But you don't want to do that on every single shot and rely on that, do you? Because what if you're shooting something and you have to hand it off to someone else? That's not really ideal by any means. So if you're one of the commenters that was in my Red Komodo video asking about matte boxes, I hope I answered some of your questions here. There basically isn't a perfect system. You kind of just have to decide what's gonna work best for you. As for me, I'm leaning towards the wooden camera system. The reason just being its quality and the fact that I'm not locked into any proprietary things. I don't wanna have to use Polar Pro filters or the Tilta filters, the Vaxis filters. With this, if I wanna put a black Pro Mist on here, I just can, I simply can do it. Okay, now that we got that down, let me reiterate that again. It's all about what you're willing to work with. Do you want to live in a proprietary system, or do you want to be more open and have something that can last for the rest of your shooting career? It really all comes down to the money for you and how much you want to spend on those systems. So I haven't picked one yet, but maybe subscribe to the channel if you want to see in the future which one I do pick, and I will talk more about that once I've kind of explored these even more than I have already. But as always, until next time guys, I'm Citrus Sakurai. See ya.